to have you join us. All
Thank you
right.
for having me.
All right. Welcome again, everyone, and thanks for sticking around. My name is Mary Umogbai, and I will be your moderator for today's AEHRP Ask the Expert Learning session. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome HR professionals, business leaders, and strategic thinkers joining us across Nigeria and across the globe today. All right. So to keep the energy flowing, we had earlier said you should introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining from. All right, I see Chinso joining from Port Harcourt. You're welcome, Chinso. And I see Chike Johnson also joining us from Lagos. Thank you. All right, Daniel Goodsire, you're welcome. You're welcome. Let's keep it coming. Let's keep it coming. Okay. Just before we dive into today's topic, let us ground ourselves once again into who we are. AHRP is a network of HR professionals committed to raising the standard for people's management and organizational leadership. Our vision is simple but bold, to be the go-to source of competent HR professionals who define or rather redefine the practice. Our mission is to create tangible value for HR professionals and organizations through coaching, mentoring, and research-based training. Every session, particularly this one, was intended to move needle on your competency and credibility. All right. I would like to remind every one of us about the biggest event on our calendar, the ninth AEHRP annual conference. It's a good place to clap. You can use your virtual emoji to just give me your excitement, show your excitement. Thank you. All right. The theme for this year annual conference is Beyond Strategy, Activating Human Capital for Sustainable Growth and Performance. And the date is November 19th to 21st. It's very important that you lock in these days in your calendar. We'll be having 2 days of virtual sessions, learning from global industry impact, and November 21st will be our gala and awards night in Victoria Island, Lagos. Registration is currently ongoing. All you have to do is to open our ahrp.org.conference link, and so that you secure your spots. Don't forget to also invite colleagues and professionals whom you believe that this community would greatly impact. All right, thank you very much. So let's turn into the reason why we are all here today. The topic for today's session is human capital arbitrage, how elite organizations quietly win in the talent game. We're in a global world, and of course, we can't lie that every organization is in a war for talent era at this time. And most organizations follow the same playbook, right? But elite organizations operate differently. They leverage human capital arbitrage, finding and developing and even deploying talent in different ways that others overlook. And it is very important that we understand this game, this talent game, so that it makes a difference in how we fill roles and build powerhouse workforce in our organization that will be impossible to replace. So let's guide us through this. To guide us through this masterclass, we're privileged to have Kamil Odumosu with us. All right, Kamil is a seasoned expert in talent strategy and organizational efficiency. He has a profound understanding of how high-performing organizations bridge the gap between human capital potential and business results. Let's take a moment to listen to Camille's abridged profile.
Kamil Odumosu, SHRMCP, is a seasoned human capital and organizational development professional with over 14 years of experience across sectors including aviation, financial services, telecommunications, consulting, civil society, and manufacturing. As Group Head of Human Resources at ValueJet Airline, he leads the translation of corporate strategy into effective people initiatives that enhance organizational performance, efficiency, and long-term competitiveness. He has a strong track record in designing and executing high-impact HR strategies such as organizational design, performance management systems, talent acquisition, leadership development, and compensation frameworks. Kamil previously held key roles at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, and Human Capital Partners, a KPMG offshoot, where he advised organizations across Africa on HR transformation, workforce planning, and capability development, while also leading complex initiatives including M&A HR due diligence, balanced scorecard implementation, and large-scale recruitment and restructuring projects. Kamil holds an MBA from the University of Lagos and AB. Tech in Urban and Regional Planning from the Federal University of Technology, Akure, and is a certified SHRM-CP professional. Combining consulting expertise with strategic leadership, he is passionate about building high-performing teams, strengthening organizational culture, and driving sustainable business success through effective people management. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome with a round of applause, Kamil Odumosu.
All right, thank you very much. And you could also give a warm welcome to Kamil using the chat box. All right, Kamil, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mary, for having me. And again, apologies for joining late. I wouldn't be sharing my screen, but I hope to engage us through the session. I hope that works.
Sure, it does.
All right, okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, good evening. What am I talking, or what chat are we having this evening? We're looking at arbitrage in the human capital space, and essentially we want to look at how elite organizations quietly win the talent game. What is human capital arbitrage? Well, it is about exploiting market inefficiencies for your gain, right? So how do we do this in human resources? It means we need to look at how to leverage the talent market intelligently than our competitors. We need to understand what is happening in the talent space, what our competitors are doing, and how we are able to move a step or ahead of them to acquire, develop, and deploy people where their value exceeds the cost. It is really not about cheap labor, right? It is more, I would say it is more of a strategic value capture through timing. You need to be very particular about the timing. It is not when your talents leave that you begin to search. You need to be very particular about succession planning, right? And how you will build your talent, from when they come in through to your organization, through their career trajectory. What are you doing to ensure that they keep progressing and they keep getting better at their competencies, right? You also need to be very particular about location. We know it's a global space now. It's a global village. There's essentially, well, I wouldn't say, I mean, there are still some particular jobs that need that physical presence, but to a large extent, people can work out of their own homes on majority of all the jobs we have around. Why does it matter now? Like I said earlier, there's global talent scarcity. And I'll give an instance in the aviation space today. We are in the world today, we are short of pilots and maintenance engineers. But what are we doing, or what are we as human resource professionals doing to ensure that we'll continue to have them, right? Essentially going to universities, polytechnics, and talk to people about flying, try to build their interest in flying, right? So it is essentially there is scarcity of talent globally. So you need to be very strategic about how you want to source and deploy your talent, right? You also need to know that, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Everyone knows that AI is transforming the world today. Hybrid work is also changing the way we work, and the the quicker you are able to adapt to all of these global trends, the better you stay competitive, right? So, global talent scarcity, AI transformation, and hybrid work have made true competition about how quickly organizations can align capability and opportunity. What do elite organizations do to quickly win? First is to anticipate the skills shift, like I'd mentioned to you earlier now, using the aviation example. There's a dearth of pilots and maintenance engineers. So you need to know what to do as an airline to be able to, hold on to the people you have and attract talent when they leave. You also need to look at pricing talent by future value. What does that mean? Not just their experience. You need to look at the more these people get better at the skills that they have, at the competence that they have, what would their future value be? So that you are able to plan in accordance with that and also able to keep them when that time comes. You need to build flexible and borderless pipelines of capability. Do not just look at your local environment in terms of wanting to attract talent. You need to go borderless. Yes, we might have a dearth of pilots and maintenance engineers in Nigeria today, but could you also look outside Nigeria? First within the West African geopolitical zone, and then perhaps outside, if that's where the talent are. I'm just hoping that I'm not speaking with myself. I'll need to get feedback.
Hi, Camille. We
Can you
can
hear
hear.
me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, all right. Okay. So how do elite organizations do it? First, you need to be able to market your talent and also run a market intelligence. You need to continuously analyze where your critical talents are emerging and not just where they exist, right? You need to use data. Right. You need to understand the science behind what is going on. Use data science to spot undervalued markets and where the rising professionals are. Secondly, you could run a build, operate, transfer kind of model, right? Where you deploy specialized teams in your market, in developing markets. You also scale the expertise rapidly and then internalize them. You need to use learning as a lever. Look at what has happened in the past, and you can use that as a predictive metric for the future. And also, very critically, you need to understand the talent currency. How do you integrate your permanent staff, your vendors? Yes. How do you leverage your permanent staff, your vendors, contractors, people around you to ensure that you as the HR professional are not just the only one sourcing talent, but you could use your network to also get them. What's the advantage in this? I would say elite organizations don't just compete on compensation alone, right? You need to look at flexibility and progression, particularly against what your competitors are doing. And you need to be able to translate this into how you, as an HR professional, want to attract talent. I'll end my talk by saying that this arbitrage isn't just about exploiting people. It is about optimizing opportunity, right? So you need to continuously read the talent market, like finance professionals will do daily, in checking their capital markets, right? And as an elite organization, turn that into a potential for sustained competitive edge. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'll take your questions now if you have any.
All right, such a wonderful session. Thank you very much. All right, so let's use the chat box for questions. Thank you very much once again, Camille. The session was really, really insightful, right? And before we take the question, I'll just use this as a reminder to inform us that today's session qualifies us for 3 general units for the HRCI recertification, CIPM upgrade points, and HRP renewal requirements. All right. So just before I go into the chat box for questions, I would like to ask you a particular question, Kamil. All right. So you mentioned that elite firms find value where others don't. And in the Nigeria concept, where everyone is chasing for top tier graduates, especially in recent times, could you just walk us through how HR leaders can identify undervalued talent pool that have high potential, but perhaps don't fit into the traditional elite profile?
So you need to be intentional about this, really,
Okay.
and continuous engagement is really very key here. You as an elite organization, or as elite organizations, there are particular talents and a particular outlook that we're looking out for. But you need to also know that some people would not fall into those box, particularly when they're outside the organization. So what do you do as an elite organization to be able to attract them? First is to engage, right? We're not looking at the outlook, but we're looking at what you are bringing in. So you need to be deliberate about actually looking for the content and not the container, if you understand what I mean. So how do you do this? You engage, you ask questions, you assess, and not just your traditional tests alone. Yes, you could use that as your first level of shortlisting, but again, you need to engage. Your assessment procedure should include an assessment center, somewhere where you are able to, engage physically, just to see that, yes, we are looking for content and not just container. And the only way to do this is to engage physically. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, sure it does. Sure it does, Camille. All right, I'm still waiting for questions. You could type in your questions or just use the reaction button to raise your hand, and then we could take your questions. So while I'm still expecting questions from the audience, I would like to ask another question. All right. Now, this topic mentions winning quietly. So, why is it an advantage for these talent strategies to remain under the radar? And what are the risks of an organization becoming too vocal about its unique talent play?
Again, because it's a competition, I'll use a game of football, for instance. You do not deploy your strategy just so that your opponent would use that to work against you. So you need to be quiet and deliberate about it, because others are not sleeping; they are also working. So once they know what you're doing, they probably will use it and even use it better. So it's always better to remain quiet with your strategy and just continuously implement quietly.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, please keep the questions coming. And if you cannot type, you could just use your reaction button. All right. Let me just ask one more question before we call it a day. Now, human capital arbitrage. It sounds like something that only multinationals can afford. So would appreciate if you could please walk us through how small business and medium-sized enterprises can implement this strategy, or is this just a game for multinationals only?
Why do you say, I mean, I'm going to throw the question back at you. Why do you say it's only multinationals who can afford?
Okay, so like I had earlier mentioned, right? The name just sounds so big, and it's like, oh, this for something like this, it's only multinationals who can afford it.
So, I'll use a clear instance of when I was in the Big Four, right? You know, you would find times where you would get to the office in like 3 months, you know, and the people who are there are just new faces. All the old faces are gone, right? Yeah. So it is it now, I mean, dawned on leadership at that time that recruitment has to be continuous, just so that one day we don't come into the office and there's nobody there. Because I mean, it was because of the kind of talent that they were quite mobile, you know, the work conditions and the kind of things that we do also, you know, it was a fast-paced environment. So you find people leaving quite often. So the business decided to build the pipeline just so that when people leave, immediately you're able to find people to fill that gap. Yes, it may look expensive, right? But I believe is that based on the kind of business that you do, that you will find this arbitrage. It is not going to not a lot of small businesses would not experience this because of the kind of things that they do. But you find that happening in multinationals because of the nature of their businesses, and that's why the arbitrage is high. I hope that understands your question. I hope that answers your question. All
Yes,
right.
yes, it
All
does.
right. Thank you.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So once again, checking the chat box for questions. Okay, I have a question from Peter Osazua. He's asking, is there really a strategy in this discussion? If yes, what is it? What are the actionable insights you can provide to participants for this training?
Do I quite understand the question?
Yeah. So okay. He's actually asking for three actionable insights that participants for this training could um, possibly implement, right, at their respective workplace.
Okay, I think it's first and foremost to be intentional about the kind of talent you want to build, you know, that you want to attract. Um, Understand where this these talents are, not just locally, you know, but also you need to make it borderless. And the last thing is to, you know, continuously engage with talent outside the organization, not just when they leave, that you begin to plan to bring them in. Hopefully that answers your question, Peter.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for sharing those actionable insights with us. Right. So I would ask, because speaking of building talent and coaching, now if an organization successfully builds a talent pool using this arbitrage, uh, how how should such organization then protect their talent investment without solely relying on massive salary increase? Because as we know it, money in most times could be a motivational factor why people are changing their jobs.
You won't always take compensation away from using compensation as a strategy to hold back your talent. That's very key because people work for money. You also need to be intentional about the culture in the organization, in your organization. How friendly is the culture? Are people comfortable coming to work, you know, leaving their homes or to come to work, or, you know, when they're working from home, they're happy to open their laptops and start work. So the culture is really very key. Growth is also something that top talent, appreciate. They want to see that from time to time they're getting better at what they do. They want to see that they are progressing, They want to see that they are being treated fairly, right? Particularly when their performance is being managed. So growth is also very key. One other thing that keeps talent is the showing appreciation for good work. People want to be appreciated, whether it's little, it sometimes doesn't even have to be monetary. Once they are mentioned, it could be on the local internet, it could be through the WhatsApp community in the organization. Once they see that they are being they are valued, then they will stay. Hope this answers your question.
Yes, yes, it does, Camille. All right. Thank you very much for this very, very insightful session. So just one final reflection, so that every participant joining the session could think about and just try to make possible adjustments. If there is one mindset shift that you think every HRO director or professional should make tomorrow morning to start winning this talent game, what would it be?
I've also understand that the world of work has changed, right? The things that top talent used to appreciate back then are completely different from what is happening out there now. Hybrid work is very, very key, right? People want to work from wherever they are. The use of AI has also transformed quite a number of things, right? Um, some jobs that used to take, hours to get done with the use of AI, you could get them out in few minutes. So we also need to understand that we as HR should adopt HR. We also need to understand that talent, particularly top talent, is global now. They are very global and mobile. Their mindsets have shifted from just working locally to to wanting to explore things outside their borders and their localities. So we should also embrace that change. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Camille, for this very, very invaluable insights. You've challenged us really to not just be administrators, but talent architect. All right. Thank you very much once again. And thank you to every participant for joining today's session. We thank you for your time. We thank you for sticking with us up to now, despite the challenge in our network initially. And we also thank you for the brilliant questions asked, right? I would like to be the first